On today's show, the Cavs made some moves this offseason, but here's some of the ways they can get better next season without relying on Max Strus or George Niang or any other changes. Here's how the ways they can get better based on internal improvement. Let's dive in.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarrell. We're the Locked On Cavs podcast, your team every day here at Locked On. Jake Stevens, as always, is on production. All right, let's dive in, Evan, to... we're going to talk today about a bunch of different things the Cavs can do. This is a great podcast idea from you, to talk about different things the Cavs can do internally to get better next season. And let's just start with, I think for me at least, the one that hangs over this team in a lot of ways, and that's just toughness and that's physicality. That was the thing. We go back to the playoffs.
Alexis at the office.
I think really the defining thing is I don't think anyone felt they played with any toughness, any grit, any fight in that series against the Knicks. That's maybe something you either have or you don't. But I think the mentality for this team, that's just like a very basic thing. I think this team needs a little bit more of an edge if they're going to go where they say they want to go.
Well, as their slogan says, let them know. They definitely let them know that they cannot handle physicality, as you noted. Like, I think it's a trickle-down effect for sure. The Cavs, first off, talk the talk for sure. They talk and definitely remind folks that they are one of the best defensive teams in the league, especially led by Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. But those two are a bit of the front runners on this situation, where if they kind of get out hustled, out muscled, out physicalitied, if that's a word, it definitely just has a trickle down effect on the rest of the team, because you saw it pretty quickly into this series, or the one series the Cavs played against the Knicks. Mitchell Robinson got whatever he wanted when he wanted against Jared Allen. He out hustled him, he outmaneuvered him, he boxed him out on every possession, and it was pretty clear on the scouting report going into this game, or the series rather, against New York, that like the Knicks are a very good rebounding team. They are a very physical team. At least the Cavs understood, like, hey, heading into this one, like, we have to match this team in physicality. But the problem is they couldn't hit that gear maybe when they got a taste of what physicality the Knicks offer, on top of it already being the playoffs. And I agree with you, like, if you're a team that wants to play with two big men, if you're a team that wants to play with two 7-footers, that prides itself on being a defensive first team, you really have to be comfortable being uncomfortable and really grinding games out, and especially a series out. Like, they've won games like that last year, but like, they need to make sure they can kind of, I guess, bottle that feeling and just kind of apply it to when the games and situations matter the most.
I think if there's a player to me that this is about, it's about Jared Allen. Like, I think it just is. I don't think there's anyone that comes across less physical relative to his position, less kind of up for some of this. Danny Cha with The Ringer this week or maybe it's like last week, early this week, did a blog, just something for every team, wish list for every team at this point in the offseason. For Cleveland Cavaliers, it was Jared Allen running lineman drills. Jared Allen is someone who has obviously been in some trade stuff. There's no need to make any quick decisions on that, I don't think.
No.
But Jared Allen kind of has to be the one if he's going to play center, if he's going to be the guy in the middle. And this accounts for Mobley too, but Lasso just plays fewer minutes at that spot. It has to be about Jared Allen, I think, being more physical. I think that's what Danny was getting at in his blog, and I think it's dead on. There's no one that came off looking less physical, less up for that kind of basketball than Jared Allen after that series. He was fair or not, and I think more fair than not, he was the scapegoat, I think, for what went wrong for Cleveland in terms of the physicality standpoint in that Knicks series.
It's the unfortunate reality of having a top-heavy team is when things go wrong, there has to be a guy that gets to blame, and Jared Allen was the easiest target, just as you said, like he was out physicaled in that series against New York. But that's always kind of been the scouting report on Jared Allen, that if you hit him a little too hard, he shrinks away from it. He doesn't really like to match physicality if you maybe hit him a little hard to start with. And it was very clear that Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein off the bench, even Josh Hart in terms of rebounding, even Obi Toppin in this few minutes, he got minutes with the Knicks in this series. Like they made it a concerted effort just to, one, impose their will to open the series on Allen, and two, they never relented on it either. Instead, and maybe didn't give Allen the breathing room to do it. And it's easier to point out, like as you said, like linemen drill. Like I laugh at the idea of just like someone as tall and lanky and just like physically huge doing lineman drills like Jared Allen. But like he does need to bulk up. He needs to kind of learn how to maybe deal with physicality and just kind of reimpose his will and his size on people, just because he is the linchpin for Cleveland defensively, because Jared Allen protecting the rim and protecting the paint does so much for the Cavs defensively, because it allows Evan Mobley to do whatever Evan Mobley feels like on defense. And I think, as you said, like there's going to be a lot of speculation and even going into the season about his future with the team. I don't think that's going to go away until maybe he shuts up the outside noise, or just the Cavs in general shut up the outside noise surrounding this, just the doubts with this team. But yeah, a lot of it starts and ends with Jared Allen. I think Evan Mobley too, like he didn't have, at least statistically, if you look at the counting stats, didn't have like an incredible playoff debut against New York, but like there were things he did that were on the smaller side of things, like on defensively, or maybe some offensive stuff that popped. But he's equally culpable in this, because if your bigs are unable to rebound and crash the glass and prevent second chance opportunities, like you're not going to be asking your 6'1" point guard Darius Garland, your 6'1" to 6'2" shooting guard Donovan Mitchell, or any of your other smaller players to kind of just impose their will like New York had. You need those two to kind of stymie the flow and prevent these just pretty, what at least seem from the outside looking in, pretty easy fixes.
Here's the thing about Jared Allen. I understand what you're saying about the top-heavy team and blame and stuff. His job, I think if we want to really simplify it, is to dunk the basketball and be physical and try to block shots. To his credit, he tries to block everything. Mm-hmm. At a certain point, I think his job is partially just to do the stuff he didn't do well at in the playoffs. And I think that's where I don't think we can, like, he could have a different regular season, play a different way, come in with a different edge. I think for me, and this is some way with the Cavs a little bit this year, maybe a little bit unfairly, I could go that far. Until I see him do it in the playoffs in a way that like kind of redeems last year, it's hard to kind of know how much of this can be changed until we get there. That's not super fair, and to some degree I'll admit that, but like Jared Allen's job is to be what he was not against the Knicks, and like until he does it in the playoffs, that's going to sit on my mind and thinking about him.
And I think that's completely valid, and that's why I said like the Cavs are a bit of front runners at times when it comes to like what they are as a team. Like in the regular season, they have all this incredible success, but like when the games actually count or when things actually matter the most, they kind of shrank from it. And as you had pointed, like to get that stink out of your mouth or just like the preconceived notions of Jared Allen, like I don't know if it's ever sustainable or even just possible for Cleveland or to get this from Jared Allen. But like in the 2019-2020 season, specifically the 2020 playoffs, Allen averaged 14.8 rebounds per game for Brooklyn in 4 games in the postseason. Like, I don't know what it was, but like that number pops for sure, because the year prior to that, it was 6.8 rebounds in the 5 games against New York and 7.4 boards per game. But like, he was getting second chance opportunities. He was really crashing the glass defensively as well. And like you said, he does have a very simplified role where like he is a low usage big man that is reliant on his guards getting him clean looks in the pick and roll. But like he should but he definitely should, in terms of just like game planning and scheming, like the Cavs coaching staff should say like, okay, Jarrett, we need you to focus more on the defensive side of the ball than offense. Like you'll get your touches and opportunities elsewhere. You paid money, blah, 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 whatever. But it's weird just because if there is like tangible proof of him being like a dominant rebounder in the playoffs, it doesn't seem to be sustainable, because it's 1 out of his 3 playoff appearances where he was just absolutely crashing the glass and eating the boards alive.
All right, coming up after this, we're going to talk about balance. Evan will explain what that means coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time. What?
No, go ahead. I'll share the segment.
Okay, I'm going to restart. Jake, I'm going to restart the ad. 3, 2, 1. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. So just pick a team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. So let's say, for instance, you're just an absolute sicko and want to bet the Cleveland Browns to win the Super Bowl. You get them at plus 3,000 odds right now. That means a $10 bet is going to could win you $300 if they pull it off and win the Super Bowl. Cleveland might burn down, but you'll have $300. You can use those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start today with all that. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, let's talk about balance, Evan. Explain what you're thinking here.
So clearly, heading into this last season, you and I had some preconceived notions, some reservations on how the fit between Garland and Mitchell would kind of look on the court. And we were pleasantly surprised to report and just share that it worked out much sooner than expected. But now that they have that comfort and familiarity with each other, I wonder who wants to be the alpha between those two on offense. Like, Donovan Mitchell has the track record, he has the pedigree, he has the proven just history that he can be that guy who gets you clutch buckets. He can kind of just carry the load. He did a lot for Cleveland last season, but if you ask him, and I don't know if you inject truth serum, you get the same answer out of him, but like he'll say, like, this is Darius's team, he's the lead guard, I'm just his co-star, blah, blah, blah. He's very quick to deflect praise. And I do look at how Darius Garland functions, and I always think about how he talks about how the way he executes on the court is a little bit of controlled chaos, and the fact that he has to be very cerebral and, okay, how do I get my teammates involved? This is an opportunity for me to score. And he's sometimes a little unselfish to a fault where he'd rather get his teammates involved instead of maybe scoring. And it's just that balance. Like, can Darius Garland maybe have a little bit more of a selfish edge heading into the season? Because statistically, he was pretty good last year, but you need more from him. And then that enters the conversation of, okay, is Donovan Mitchell comfortable with maybe taking less shots or maybe taking a lesser role? Or is Darius just willing to be the Robin to his Batman and let Donovan just do more Donovan Mitchell things? Like, I'm very curious to see what that next evolution is. And it's finding that balance and that rapport. So again, when the games are tightest, or maybe there's just situations where we don't have to look at how the Cavs ran into a brick wall, where the Cavs were very much waiting for Donovan Mitchell to get it going in the postseason last year, and he couldn't. And you saw it in game 2, like Garland had it going and Mitchell was the secondary player, and that's then just between the two of them. But like, they got to kind of figure that out so they don't run into these issues where somebody maybe falls off a cliff or just completely commands defensive attention from an opponent.
I think there's two parts to this. Number one, I think guards that both play very ball dominant will like just get better in year 2. I think we saw that with Devin Booker and Chris Paul. I think that's something that takes time to really build all of that together. Secondly, I think this is also a lot on Donovan Mitchell to be a little bit better of a creator, and I wonder how much better of a creator he can get. The thing with Donovan Mitchell that I think maybe keeps him from being like purely one of the top like 10 guys in the league is I think he doesn't have the same creation chops that a Devin Booker does or that an Anthony Edwards might have. Like, if you want to look ahead to like the Olympic team next summer, like, it's as good as Donovan Mitchell is, he might be the third choice shooting guard. Like, it's going to be Book, and I think Ant might be ahead of him, and I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to do. There's a little just bit lacking with the creation with Donovan. I think if he can be in a spot where he's a little, the reads come a little bit easier, they design stuff that allows some of the reads to just kind of be built in, and Darius can be featured in that way, and they make a tactical choice from a coaching perspective. I think what you're talking about is possible. I think some of it comes organically, but I think there's more on Mitchell. I think the Cavs would be better off if Mitchell does acquiesce a little bit to Garland, especially as Garland is ascending. And I think Mitchell's closer to the finished version of Donovan Mitchell because he's 26, will be 27, in a couple weeks.
And that's the interesting thing is, like, as you said, Garland is ascending. He is going to get better and better and better. Again, from just like a pure counting stat standpoint, his statistics in his lone all-star season and then last year are almost identical, maybe on better efficiency, at least compared to what year 3 was. And obviously, like when you look at getting Donovan Mitchell, you avoid the issue that you had 2 seasons ago where the Cavs were like, okay, Darius, we need you to do everything on offense and also be our primary like shot creator for everybody else as well. And his back literally gave out. And it was just a recurring issue for Cleveland. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves. And I agree, like, how much higher, how much more can we get from Donovan Mitchell from a playmaking aspect? And I was pleasantly surprised with just like how I know it's basic stuff, but at least he's able to have an understanding of how to function in a pick and roll, how to like, dump off to his bigs, who I'm going to touch on in a second. But is he comfortable? Yeah. Like, is there more to his game that he can just kind of tap into as he becomes probably the finalized product, which again is still a great player, but there's just like those weird quirks and quips that come with just these two trying to like coalesce and acquiesce with one another, and they're already in a good spot. It's just, what is the next level going to be as Darius Garland's star rises and as Donovan Mitchell just kind of hits the ceiling of maybe what he is as a player offensively? And on the inverse of it, I know we're going to talk about Evan Mobley and Darius Garland a lot in the final segment of this episode, but you do have to wonder, like, what does year 3 Evan Mobley look like next to Jared Allen? Like, is it functional, or is it just become more and more apparent just because there's, again, that outside noise with Allen kind of being the most tradable banana in terms of just this 4 banana group bunch they have, but is it functional enough offensively? Like, does Mobley become a shooter? Do the Cavs find ways to empower him just to use his playmaking, everything else? Because they talked a lot last season about all the little things they wanted Evan Mobley to do, and we didn't see a ton of it offensively. And does that complement Jared Allen, or does Jared Allen find a way to maybe plug and play himself a little bit more? Or do the Cavs find a way to plug and play Jared Allen a little bit more to make Mobley more of a player? Because you have the 2 guards who are working pretty well, but like there's a lot more limitations with the pairing of Mobley and Allen offensively compared to what the limitations are right now with between Garland and Mitchell.
I think that shift already started last year, though. I think the part of what changed last year is, number one, Mobley played more minutes per game than Allen, took 3 more shots per game, wasn't as efficient, but that isn't super surprising. And if you look at who was Darius Garland's lob partner last year versus the year before, because Evan Mobley last year was Jared Allen the year before, I think the shift with those two, it's already shifting Mobley into more of the featured offensive role. And I think Allen's going to be like a glorified $20 million role guy who plays 30 minutes a night. There's going to be nights where I could see him, depending on what they want to do spacing-wise, he plays 25. Maybe there's games he plays 35 if they're playing Joel Embiid or they're playing Giannis or Jokic, right? I think that's where we're headed. I think Mobley's going to play 35 a night. I think your big 3 is Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, and everything else is just about balancing them. I think if there's any balance, if there's any the pull between Mobley and Allen, I think you're just tilting it all towards Mobley at this point. Where I think there's a real tug and a real need to find harmony between your guards. I think it's all about. I think the Mobley Allen thing is just straight up all about Evan Mobley.
I agree with you. It's just interesting how the Cavs have kind of built things out, because Chris Fedor reported that the Cavs maybe view Evan Mobley as a center long term, and do they want to kind of keep this project going between him and Allen, because it does a lot of good things defensively rather, and do they want to kind of stymie the growth and development of Mobley to an extent on offense, or do they maybe just realize like, okay, we really need to find more of a stretch here 4 that is a high usage role player that is comfortable with not getting a ton of shot opportunities. It's like maybe like the 4th or 5th option on offense in the starting lineup. But like I agree with like the dichotomy and the layout of the minutes and just how maybe certain lineups close certain games too, or just it's more of a matchup based thing. But you have to find ways to empower Evan Mobley more. And yeah, like you said, that there's tremors of it there, but it's year 3, and the Cavs, myself included, probably have a lot of high expectations for Evan Mobley this year. It is just, what can the Cavs do to kind of help him reach that level? And I think it's fair to question, like, how far are you willing to let this experiment with him and Allen go on offense?
Up next, the growth of Darius Garland, the growth of Evan Mobley. I think maybe the 2 most important things to next year's Cavs. We'll talk about it. All right, last segment here. Here's just the stone cold facts about Darius Garland and Evan Mobley as far as I see it. These are two. Darius Garland has made an all-star team. I think he'll make more. Evan Mobley hasn't made one yet, but he will. He is 22 years old. Evan Mobley is. Mm-hmm. He's going into year 3. Darius Garland has his max kick in this year. This is already year 5, but he's only 23. He won't turn 24 until late January of 2024. If you want to talk about just assuming, like, maybe not linear straight to the top because that's not how this works, but if you want to assume progression for anybody, if you want to assume improvement for anyone, if you want to assume new skill sets, just different aspects of their game, if there are 2 guys on this roster that you're going to bet on that just get a lot better, not just this year, but probably the year after and the year after that, I would say, and Mobley probably even a longer window than that, it's these 2 guys. And if you're talking about how this team gets better based on things that are just running it back from last year, it's about those 2 guys. They're already really good at their ages. I think they're only going to, health provided, those guys are just going to take you a certain place. I think that's just the obvious part of all this to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mobley is a lot more of a cerebral concept for sure, I think, just because, like you said, like you need maybe a little bit more of a runway. Maybe it's more of a, not this upcoming year, but the following year, year after that, and year after that. But like, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, just like, is he going to develop more of a handle? Is he going to become more of a shooter? Is he going to be a little bit of in between? Like, I don't know what Evan Mobley's apex will be offensively. Like defensively, he's already otherworldly. I wouldn't be surprised if he is seriously in the defensive player of the year competition again this season, and maybe actually wins it this year as well, or this upcoming season as well. But I'm going to ask you this just because I think about Darius Garland and look at him. Like, what do you, heading into year 4, because he's, again, his star is rising. He's ascending as a player. He is positioning himself to be the best or the second best player, depending on Mobley's development on this Cavs team long term. What do you need to see from him just heading into this upcoming season to just see that improvement to help take the Cavs to that next level? Just heading into the postseason.
I think it's scoring aggression for one. I think you saw them in the Knicks series. One of the games they had that was successful was one of his better scoring games. I think that you need a version of Garland who's a little more aggressive as a scorer. I think defensively, considering he is 6'1", considering like he's not the biggest guard, I think there's just like built-in kind of a cap on what he's going to be on that end, and that's fine. But he is what he is on that end. Mm-hmm. Offensively, I think there is room as a scorer, and I think there's room for him to be a little bit more aggressive and looking for his own shot in the paint. I think there's a floater there for him if he wants it. I think there's the ability to draw more fouls there if he wants it. I think there's sometimes, for in a way that I respect because it's kind of old school, and that he's looking to empower others all the time, and that his first choice, it feels like he is looking to shoot. This is a guy that first position has below average shooting frequency at the rim. Some of that's because he plays with 2 bigs. Mm-hmm. He doesn't take as many threes as I think you'd like for relative position, so I think more threes and more just trying to get to the rim and drawing fouls. I think that's just like added. A, that'll take pressure off of Mitchell. B, that'll make him more efficient. And C, I think it just that's the path forward for him. There's not going to be like a Darius Garland all defensive season. That's not in the cards for him. What is in the cards for him is like a bona fide do everything all-star level guard who is scoring 25 a game and averaging 10, 11 assists a game. Like that is very much in the cards for Darius if he wants to go chase it. One of the most notable things about last year was in his all-star season in 21-22. He had an and one percentage of 26% on over a quarter of his shots. This is according to the Clean of the Glass. He drew an and one. Mitchell comes in last year. That drops to 20%. He went from the 70th percentile in his all-star season to the 30th percentile last year, the bottom 30% of point guards last year. Getting back up to 26 with Mitchell on your team feels high because just the amount he's going to attack like that is going to be different. And maybe there's just some flukiness in those numbers as well. But I think him being more aggressive and drawing more fouls in that way and trying to hunt for N1s, I think would be a big deal.
I think N1 hunting is tough. It depends on the officiating. I think
Sure,
officials
but like
kind of backing off on that and letting it be more of a thing. But like, I agree with you. Being more aggressive on offense is, at least in terms of scoring, is what I would like to see more of from Darius heading into this season. And it's not just drawing more contact and getting to the basket more often. He is a little bit of a fragile player, so maybe not too much physicality compared to like what Mitchell or even Colin Sexton before him dealt with. But for me, it's just, I think it's hard to explain because he can sometimes be so unselfish to a fault in getting his teammates involved. But I'd like to see a little bit more of a selfish edge sometimes from Darius, because he can be the number one option on the offense. He can be the quote unquote alpha on offense and just like really let the things flow through him and let him be the number one option on offense for Cleveland. But it's hard because you have to work, or at least share the court with a top 15 player in Donovan Mitchell and a guy who's arguably one of the best players at his position. You also have Jared Allen, who does need shot opportunities to probably keep him engaged on both ends of the floor. And then Evan Mobley as well, who is ascending too. So it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves. But like you said, there's ways that the Cavs can get creative with this. There's ways for them to get more involved within the offense, even though he's already incredibly involved to begin with. But like, I will say this again, like Donovan Mitchell will take this team as far as he can, but there is clearly a limit to it. And as you said, like he is becoming more of a refined, like he's almost done refining as a player. I'm curious to see maybe once Mitchell hits that limit at some point, is Darius Garland comfortable shouldering the load and being the guy who maybe takes the Cavs over the finish line and even further to their destination?
More likely to make an all-star team this year, Darius Garland or Evan Mobley?
Darius Garland, just because he'll have the ball in his hands more often. And I think in terms of just all-star voting, it's a lot of it is counting stats and just like, oh, this guy scores a lot of points. And maybe there could be a nerdy pick, but I think Garland is just an easier, more logical. I mean, like Mitchell is going to be a likely representative just based on fan vote alone, but like Garland could join him as a bench player if they do just conference versus conference this year.
I might just go Mobley just because there's so many guards. I think that's the thing about this. That is fair. It is. If you look at guards in the East, you could have Dame if he gets traded, if and when he gets traded, Tyrese Halliburton, Donovan Mitchell, Drew Holiday, Garland, Trae Young, who always gets a bunch of fan votes. Like it's not like some guys have migrated the other way, but Jalen Brunson is there. LaMelo Ball presumably be healthy this year and is insanely popular. Like guard is just stacked. Yeah,
say Tyrese Maxey is gonna do numbers like.
You have just there's a lot of like not that big is not competitive and isn't full of guys. The front court is loaded as well, but sometimes I just wonder if the guard it's just like stacked. And like there's it's like it wouldn't shock me in some ways if Garland had a Mike Conley-esque like run in that like he doesn't get as many All-Star games as he actually deserves because there's just so many guards. Like that was it took forever for Mike Conley to make one All-Star game, and Garland made one much earlier in his career than Conley did. So it's not a 1-to-1 comp, but like the talent level is really high. There's a lot of guards. You can just get squeezed, and he could be a guy that just unfortunately gets squeezed. All right, let's end there. That's going to be the last Locked On Cast for the week. We'll talk to y'all after the weekend. Thanks again to Jake Stevens for producing.